YOLO. In today's video, I kind of want to talk about why inflation is going to prevent you from ever being able to save your way to riches and wealth. And to understand inflation, we kind of have to roll it on back. The year? I think it was 1971. The president, Richard Nixon, aka Tricky Dick, he temporarily took America off the gold standard. The gold standard simply meant that any dollar bill before then could be exchanged for 1 ounce of US gold. So the dollar was as good as gold, the strongest currency in the world. Taking it off the gold standard then meant it was tied to absolutely nothing. Now we're in what's called a fiat currency system. Basically just means that as long as everyone believes dollars have worth, then they have worth, since they're not really backed up by anything. They're just paper and ink at this point. And the Federal Reserve just keeps printing more and more of them, which is devaluing the dollar, causing inflation. For example, if you bought a coffee for, let's say, $2, but inflation was 5%, you could expect in a year or two that coffee to become $2.10, and so on. The same coffee, it takes the same ingredients to make it, the same employees are grinding up the beans, but because the money becomes slightly worthless over time, the price has to increase. Meaning, when you were a kid and you got $20, you felt like you were rich. Now you get $20 and you're like, gee whiz, this is pretty much worthless. Now, on top of inflation hurting your chances at ever being able to save your way to riches, you also have shrinkflation. Think the double-stuffed Oreos, for example. The current state of Oreos, yes, the Oreo economy is what we are in. The current state of double-stuffed Oreos in 2025 is what the standard Oreo size was when I was a child. And I'm not going to tell you how long ago that was because I'm feeling old. But I'm not actually even that old. I'm 28. And I can remember that Oreos used to be much bigger than they are today. If you're buying anything less than the double stuffed, it's these thin, tiny little Oreos that barely have any icing in them. And yet you're still paying normal prices or even more prices because of the inflation. For a short while after we were taken off the gold standard, there was an economic boom as people were able to much more easily access large amounts of debt so that they could invest and grow their businesses. However, debt has to be repaid. And with the value of the dollar decreasing year after year, having to have more money to buy the same amount or even less amount of items, and interest payments going up, there started to be this very nasty double-edged economic squeeze on the country. Now, one president tried to undo this by, instead of taking us back to the gold standard to fix everything, he was going to take us to the silver standard, which would have made each US dollar worth 1 ounce of silver and limited the total money supply that could have been printed, preventing further devaluation of the currency. His name? John F. Kennedy. And what did they do to him? They blew his brains out, because if you're the people who control the money printers, you stand to make a massive profit from the fiat currency system, and you don't want things to change. Because of these reasons, the generation that first had to really deal with these effects were ill-prepared, that being the baby boomers. They were told that as long as they worked hard, put in 40, 50 years at a company, maybe went to college and got a good paying job, saved up their money, that they could live off of 4% of their total savings each year and be able to ride out retirement easily. Well, with items costing more and your money buying even less, that quickly became apparent that it was not going to work. The boomer generation, which we all love to give a hard time because they're hoarding all the resources, have an entire hoarding mentality because they've watched everything they've ever built their lives working towards slowly shrinking as they get older. This is one of the reasons you see so many old people standing outside of Walmart just being like, "Oh, welcome to Walmart," instead of enjoying their golden years like they had planned and prepped for. They find that $20 no longer can fill up their gas tank, buy all their groceries, and get them something on the side. They got done dirty. Now, one thing to keep in mind about inflation is if inflation goes down, say it's at 9% like it was a year or two ago, and then it goes and drops down to a 5%, that does not mean the prices of anything that you try to buy will go down. That just means that the prices won't grow as fast. All the items are still going to increase in price, but they're going to increase at a slower rate. So hopefully you'd be able to make more money, although the job market in America is hyper competitive and wages have not kept up with inflation at all. So that's also going to be a bit of a problem right there. Because of these reasons, inflation is sometimes referred to as the hidden tax. And your money becomes slightly worth less because it is actually worthless. It's fiat currency, play money, make-believe, pretend. As long as everyone believes that it has value, it will. Because it no longer is backed or supported by anything. Now, the last time I checked, you and I, the common man, we don't get to choose what the country's economic policies are. So there's no way to easily rectify this situation on a grand scale. The closest thing we could do to bring about change would be to vote in candidates who are far more financially educated and fiscally minded so that they can actually start undoing some damage. But with the nation being, I think, $36 trillion in debt, that's going to be a long time coming. Now, amongst all this economic doom and gloom, there is some ray of hope, a silver lining in the clouds. And that is that the average person can beat inflation through investing. See, if inflation is, say, 5%, but the US stock market has historically averaged a 8 to 10% return year over year, if you invest, you're going to make more money than what inflation is taking away. In short, things may cost more in the future, but if your investments pay more than the inflation, you'll actually end up with a surplus or an excess of dollars. This is how you end up beating inflation. And on top of that, the second most important thing you gotta know is financial education and literacy. See, they never taught us any of this stuff in school. Inflation, interest rates. They give 18-year-olds tens of thousands to possibly hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt right off the bat to go into school. So the more you know, the more well-armed you are to conquer inflation. Because, as we've seen, you're not going to be able to save your way to riches. You're going to have to get there through investing or owning businesses. One fun little fact before the video ends is that the Federal Reserve Bank is not part of the federal government. It does not hold any reserve of cash, and it is not a bank. It is purely a name they chose so that they could trick as many people as possible for their business, which is printing money. Legally. But yeah, like the video if you didn't know that. And if you did know that, drop me a comment telling me that it's not a very fun fact, that you already knew it and I should get better facts in the future. But enjoy this final kill here as I get absolutely murderized. And I'll catch you on the flip side.
Give me some rounds.